Ever felt like your prayers are not being heard? It's a sensation that many of us have grappled with at some point in our lives. We kneel down, close our eyes, and send out a heartfelt plea to the heavens. We plead for relief from our troubles, for comfort in our times of sorrow, for the fulfillment of our deepest desires. And then silence. The heavens seem to remain closed, and our entreaties seem to echo back to us, unanswered. This feeling, my friends, is not uncommon. In fact, it's a part of the human experience. Whether we're praying for a loved one's health, for success in our endeavors, or for peace in a troubled world, we've all had moments when our prayers felt like they were bouncing off the ceiling, leaving us with a sense of being ignored, even abandoned. But why does this happen? Why do we sometimes feel as though our prayers are falling on deaf ears? Is it because we're not praying hard enough, or not saying the right words? Is it because we're not worthy of an answer? Or is it because God, in His infinite wisdom, has other plans for us? The truth is, these feelings of doubt and confusion are not a sign of a lack of faith, but rather a testament to our human nature. We crave immediate responses, tangible results. We want to see the fruits of our prayers right away, but life, as we all know, doesn't always work that way. This sense of unanswered prayers can be disheartening, even devastating. It can shake our faith and make us question our beliefs. But it's important to remember that just because we can't see or hear a response, it doesn't mean that there isn't one. So when you're feeling like your prayers are just whispers in the wind, remember this. It's not a question of whether God is listening. He is always. It's about understanding that His ways are not our ways and His timing is not our timing. But is God really not listening, or is there something else at play? There are many misconceptions about prayer that may lead us to believe that God is not listening. Firstly, let's tackle one common misconception: that God is only interested in our prayers when they're about big, life-altering issues. Some people think that God doesn't care about the small stuff, the daily grind, or the minor issues that occupy our thoughts. But this couldn't be further from the truth. God is interested in every detail of our lives, no matter how small or insignificant they may seem to us. He wants to hear about our joys, our sorrows, and everything in between. Remember, there's no prayer too small or insignificant for God. Another common misconception is the belief that God should answer our prayers exactly the way we want Him to. We might pray for a specific outcome, and when things don't pan out as we expected, we think God didn't hear us. But it's important to remember that God sees the big picture. He knows what's best for us, even when we don't. His ways are not our ways, and His thoughts are not our thoughts. So when our prayers aren't answered in the way we anticipate, it doesn't mean God isn't listening. It simply means He has a different and ultimately better plan for us. Finally, some people believe that if they're not getting answers, they're not praying hard enough or they're not worthy enough. But let's clear this up. God's hearing isn't dependent on the volume or eloquence of our prayers. He listens because of His love for us. Your worthiness doesn't earn His attention. His love is unconditional. These misconceptions can lead to feelings of prayers going unheard. But the truth is, God hears all prayers, from the smallest whisper to the loudest cry. He cares about every detail of our lives, and His responses are always in our best interest, even when we can't see it. It's not that God is not listening, but our understanding of prayer might need a little adjustment. God's responses to our prayers might not be what we expect. You see, the divine operates on a plane far beyond our mortal comprehension. Our desires, as earnest as they may not align with the grand design that God has in store for us. Let's consider the possibility of God saying no to our prayers. When we hear no, it can be disappointing, even heartbreaking. But remember, His wisdom surpasses ours. A no today might be protecting us from a harm we cannot foresee, or it might be preparing us for a greater blessing down the road. Then there are times when God may say, "Not yet." Patience, my friends, is a virtue for a reason. We live in a world of instant gratification, which often makes waiting feel like an eternity. But God's timing is perfect. He knows when we are ready to receive His blessings and when we still need time to grow. A "not yet" from God is an invitation to trust in His timing. Now let's talk about those moments when God answers in a way we don't recognize. You see, God's ways are not our ways. He might not deliver a solution wrapped in the package we anticipated. Instead, He may choose to work subtly, gently guiding us towards the answer. It's like a whisper in the wind, a nudge in the right direction. We might not always see it, but if we pay attention, we can feel it. This, my friends, can lead to the feeling of prayers going unanswered. But just because we don't see the answer we expected doesn't mean God is not working in our lives. He is always listening, always responding, always guiding us. His silence doesn't mean absence. It's an invitation to deepen our faith, to listen more closely, to trust more completely. So let's remember, just because the response is not what we expected, does not mean He is not listening. In fact, He is listening more closely than we could ever imagine. Understanding God's will is key to understanding His responses to our prayers. In search for answers, we often find ourselves at a crossroads, wondering why our prayers seem to fall on deaf ears. But the truth is, God hears each and every one of our prayers. The challenge lies not in His hearing, but in our understanding. To fully grasp the concept of prayer, we need to delve deeper into the profound mystery that is God's will. God's will isn't a reflection of our desires, nor is it a mirror image of our plans. It's a divine blueprint designed with wisdom beyond our comprehension. It's a master plan that always seeks our ultimate good, even when it seems puzzling or contrary to our expectations. Now you may ask, but how can something that causes pain or confusion be for our good? Well, consider a piece of coal under extreme pressure and heat. It doesn't understand why it must endure such hardship, but we know that this process transforms it into a beautiful diamond. Just like that piece of coal, we may not comprehend the purpose of our trials, but rest assured, they are part of God's grand design to shape us into the best versions of ourselves. Understanding God's will is like tuning into a frequency. We may not always get clear signals, and the static can often be frustrating. But once we adjust our antennas, align our hearts, and attune our minds to His divine frequency, we begin to hear His gentle whispers. It's important to remember that God's will is not a demand, but an invitation to trust Him more, to lean on His understanding, and to let Him guide us through the shadows into the light. So when our prayers seem unanswered, it's not a sign of God's indifference, but rather an invitation to trust His will, to believe that He has a plan, a purpose, and a promise for us. When we align our prayers with God's will, we may find that He is indeed listening. And not just listening, but shaping, guiding, and loving us through every step of our journey. Faith and patience are key when it comes to prayer. Imagine a gardener who plants a seed and then sits back, expecting a fully grown tree to appear the very next day. It sounds absurd, right? Because we understand that the process of growth takes time and requires patience. Prayer operates in a similar manner. When we pray, we're essentially planting seeds of faith. And like the gardener, we must be patient, allowing the seeds to germinate, sprout, and eventually bear fruit. We must understand that God hears all prayers, but His timing and answers may not align with our immediate expectations. This is where faith comes into play. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. It's believing in the unseen, trusting that even when the world is silent, God is still working behind the scenes. It's holding on to hope when circumstances seem hopeless. In the grand tapestry of life, we see only a tiny fraction of the whole picture at any given time. But God, in His infinite wisdom, sees the entire design. He understands how each thread weaves together to form a beautiful, cohesive pattern. And so, when He answers our prayers, He does so in accordance with this grand design, ensuring that every answer, whether it's a yes, a no, or a wait, serves our ultimate good. So, if you ever feel like your prayers are not being heard, hold on to your faith, exercise patience, and remember that God operates beyond our human understanding. Just as a seed takes time to grow into a tree, so too do our prayers take time to manifest into God's perfect answers. In the end, it's not about our timing, but God's perfect timing. It's not about our limited understanding, but God's infinite wisdom. And it's not about our will, but God's perfect will. Remember, God hears all prayers, and His answers are always for our good, even if we can't see it at the moment.